In this video, I'm going to give further information about attributions and attribution theory, and I'm going to specifically talk about a specific idea from Kelly's covariation model of attribution. In this model, Kelly proposes that people automatically make attributions based on three factors. What are those three factors? Consensus, distinctiveness, and consistency. So in this situation, people create an understanding of an event involving an actor and a target. So one person is behaving a certain way toward another person. Your actor is engaging in the behavior. The target is the recipient of the behavior in some way. So you see an event, you see a situation, and you have to understand that event. Like, hey, what is going on? Why is this going on? And when you come up with these reasons, you consider these three things. So with consensus, that's another word for like agreement. You know, what is agreeing or not agreeing when you're taking consensus into account? Do other people act the same way to the target person? All right, so that actor, are they acting the same way as others towards the target? That is one thing that we take into account. If there is consensus, if we have high consensus, we'll say, okay, the target is asking for the behavior in some way. The target is the source, is the reason for the behavior. So let's think of an example. Let's think of an example where you might have to create an understanding. Let's say you see someone in the middle of a public street and they are yelling and they're like, throw me that, give me that, throw me that. And they're yelling at a particular person, someone who's up on a balcony, and they're yelling at them and they're saying, throw me that, give me that. All right, what's going on in that situation? With the little bit of information that I've given you, you may not be sure, so you're going to have to take these things into account. So with consensus, well, what are other people? Or what are the other people doing? If it's a situation where only that person is yelling at that person saying, throw me that, give me that, you might be like, what is up with this person? Are they just a very demanding person? Are they aggressive? Or, are they under the influence? What's going on? But if there's a crowd of people yelling and throwing and saying, hey, give me that, give me that. Maybe it's a Mardi Gras scene in New Orleans. This looks completely different. If it's a Mardi Gras scene in New Orleans where you have a crowd of people yelling and saying, throw me that, and the person on the balcony, maybe they have a Mardi Gras trinket, some beads or something, and they're getting ready to throw, that is completely different than you're on some other city street and it's just one person yelling that. You're not going to come up with the same explanations, probably the same attributions. Now, the other thing that we consider is distinctiveness, right? You have to know a little bit about the actor for this, the person who's engaging in the behavior. Is this how the actor usually behaves? Is this their usual behavior? If it's a person who never yells and you see them yelling, you're going to be like, whoa, what's going on that got this person to yell? But if they yell all the time, if they're, if that's their normal way of doing things, you're like, there they go, yelling and demanding things again. That's how they do it. All right, you're going to interpret things differently based on whether this behavior is usual for the actor. So if there is distinctiveness, if it's unusual behavior for the actor, you assume that the target brought it on, or the situation perhaps brought it on in some way. If this is not distinctive behavior, all right, if this is their usual behavior, you assume, well, that's something about the actor that is making the situation happen. Now, what about consistency? What do we consider with consistency? Do the actor and the target engage in similar behavior? Do the actor and the target always act this way together? And you're not always going to be privy to that information. You're not always going to know. But let's say the person that's getting yelled at saying, hey, throw me that, that is someone who's been throwing stuff to all sorts of people. They've already been throwing stuff. The person's already been like, hey, throw me something. And they've thrown them a few trinkets. You're like, oh, yeah, there's consistency here. They've been doing that back and forth towards each other. That's their usual way. They've been giving it back and forth. There's been give and take. All right. So If you have consistency, if they are both acting the same way around each other, then both the actor and the target are contributing to the situation. So let's think of another situation where we might have to form an attribution. So let's say you're going in, let's say you're having an outing to Disneyland or something like that. Just think of some fun place. If you hate Disneyland, think of some fun place that you like to go, but where crowds go. You might see some crowds. And you walk in and you see two people, and one of them is running at the other one, getting ready to give them a big old embrace. All right, you have to make an attribution for, what's going on here? What led to this situation? So you make those considerations. So consensus. Are other people running up to hug that person? Maybe that person is dressed as Mickey Mouse, and lots of children are running to them like, yay, it's Mickey! All right, whether if it's just one person, you're probably going to assume other things. Like if only one person is being run at, you're like, oh, well, there's a special situation. That's a different situation than this is like a character dressed up. Now, distinctiveness. All right, so is that the actor's usual behavior? The person running up to give the hug, do they just go up and run up and hug everybody? Are they a very affectionate person, or is this unusual? You know, you might be in a situation where you have a very quiet adult or child who's really into Disney. Maybe you have a child who's very nonverbal, non-expressive, but they see their favorite character, and then they have distinctiveness when they're like, you know, and it's like, well, why is this happening? Because that character, the target is the character. The target brought this on because they're special. You know, it's a different situation when you have distinctive versus less distinctive behavior. And then consistency. All right, if someone's running up to someone to hug them and they're like, oh no, what are you doing? That is a completely different situation. Okay, you're going to form a completely different attribution than if the person who's being run at holds out their arms like, yeah, let's hug. You know, if they are both getting into the hug, if they are both like, yeah, this is fun, yes, let's do affection right now, you interpret it differently than if one is all excited going in for a hug and the other one's like, oh no, what are you doing? If they're not behaving consistently, you're going to interpret the situation differently. All right, so that's a basic explanation and description of Kelly's covariation model of attribution.